One of the findings actually I thought was interesting in the thesis was this idea of pronatalism within the workplace. It was shining through so heavily. So even people that did go on to have a baby, they felt still triggered by baby showers, scan photos, all the things go around. And I didn't realise that would be a finding.
Welcome to The Full Stop, a podcast specifically for those that are childless not by choice, hosted by Berenice Howard-Smith, Sarah Lawrence and me, Michael Hughes. And our aim is to shed light on the many ways that people arrive within the childless community and the issues specific to us. This episode we welcome back Katy Schnitzler, an academic and corporate trainer who we last had on the show about 5 years ago. And a lot has changed for her in that time, but we'll let her talk about that. She shares insights on supporting childless individuals in the workplace, and we explore the complex realities of childlessness, societal perceptions, workplace challenges, and the importance of inclusive conversations. And we finish off with some practical suggestions on how to create that inclusive work environment. So, let's meet Katy again.
Welcome back to The Full Stop.
Thank you for having me back again. Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be back. I can't believe it's been 5 years, but yeah, very excited to be here.
Yeah, it's really good to have you here. So the episode today, we wanted to talk about handling our boundaries, I think, within I know we've done boundaries in the previous episode, but this one is more to do with getting the right balance, I think, in the workplace and around our feelings and our identities when we're at work, and we've got holidays, we've got demands like that coming up where we might not have our voices heard as much as we would like. And particularly I'm thinking about people who might work in areas where they have to take their holidays during the school term. They're teachers, or they are limited as well as to what they can do. I'm thinking of education first off, but there are other areas I'm sure as well that impacts. So that was kind of where we were going with the conversation today.
Yeah. Important.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to kind of run some of the thoughts by yourselves as well.
Yeah.
But as it's been 5 years, Katy, maybe you better introduce yourself again, because we'll have a lot of new listeners. So who are you and what do you do?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Start at the beginning. So I'm an academic by background, and I was just saying about submitting the PhD. So yeah, I use research to inform practice in organisations. So I'm a corporate trainer alongside the academic role. So I train on topics about reproductive health. So that includes pregnancy loss, infertility, and menstrual health, and of course childlessness as well. And really just helping organisations to know how to better support this area and these areas, because obviously, they are prevalent. And I think a lot of organisations do want to help and do the right thing, but they just don't really know how. So yeah, it's an absolute, honour to be able to use the research in this way instead of it kind of getting dusty on a shelf somewhere. So yeah, that's what I'm going to try to do today. I'm going to try and use examples from the research that I've done. So also just the work that I've done through the consultancy. So my consultancy is called Missed Workshops. And yeah, we were established in 2020. So yeah, not too long after I set up then that I came onto the podcast first time. Yeah.
And so what have the last 5 years been like for you for Missed?
Yeah, to be honest, it's actually been quite busy, and, that's such a positive, I'd say, for the field, because actually it shows that employers are more engaged and they do want to make change in these areas. Especially childlessness, actually. That's the one. I wonder if it's just because there's not many people, specialising in that area. But yeah, just recently. So I had to kind of put the PhD first when I was doing the write-up, but I was still taking on, a fair few employers, and the most popular topic was that one. So it's really pleasing to see, to be honest, and I just really enjoy the actually helping and feeling like you're making a difference. And I think the most rewarding part are definitely the disclosures, and usually afterwards they put it in the survey and they'll just say, thank you for talking about this, and they share really personal experiences, which is always so moving. But yeah, so the next thing I would like to do is put together e-learning in like a proper techie platform. So I've offered e-learning in the past, but it was put together by myself and I'm not very good at tech. So I've got someone I'm working with, and I think it will make it a lot more accessible for people, especially as it's obviously sensitive, for many. And I think as well, having something to refer back to is quite useful. So it's kind of through demand. But yeah, that's where I'm at the moment, really.
Are you seeing many changes? So when you first started in 2020 to where you kind of are now, I know you've obviously been busy with the PhD. What sort of changes are you seeing in kind of attitudes or interest? Have you seen any?
I think one thing that's really helped is the policy change for pre-24-week loss. And that's really helped to build traction, around that topic, and to kind of use it as, look, this is going to be something that is actually in legislation. You're going to have to adhere to this. So that's been quite useful. And also talking about menopause, I found that, being able to use that as almost like a, someone's sneezing. Bless you. So yeah, it's kind of like, I think it's one of the topics that you can kind of lean on others, where actually you can see more conversation. You can use that to kind of help to bring in these conversations. They're essentially, they run training on all different topics. They're called GovPD, and they are actually going to run childlessness for the first time, which is amazing. So yeah, and sometimes it's a bit of a battle convincing. And when you show, employers the stats, they can't believe it, So I think some topics are easier than others. Pregnancy loss being one that's really, I would say, gets a lot of traction because of that legislation change. But childlessness, I feel, is growing, but there's obviously still a lot more to do in all areas, really. But definitely some positive change, I think, overall, just the amount of traction.
I think that's a testament to the amount of work and investment you've put in it, that actually it is getting traction. Because, I think back to when I worked in a corporate environment, there just wasn't any awareness around this. There was obviously a little bit about maternity leave and that sort of thing, but miscarriage, IVF, all of those sort of really difficult areas just were not a topic of conversation anywhere.
I think we're getting a bit better at speaking about, I know it doesn't just affect women, but women's health, because you've got the women's health strategy, and you have to have now menopause action plans, don't you? So those things really help to bring this conversation in, I think, because, and I don't need to tell you guys, but obviously there's a huge link between menopause and childlessness, isn't there? And it's that point that can really trigger, not that grief ends, but you know what I mean? It can be such a triggering point. And I think actually using that to help to say, actually, this is part of this conversation as well. It's part of pregnancy loss and infertility as well, because not everybody, goes on to have a baby, and making sure that, because, sometimes I feel, I don't know if you've come across this yourselves, but I feel that there's a lot of success stories, not just in the media, but it feels a bit like, even with the rainbow baby stories. And that's really important. I understand it gives people hope, but actually I think there's a lot of silencing around alternative paths and alternative endings. And, because I think some people feel that they don't want to, like, maybe trigger other people. I remember Jodie Day spoke about this. She said, some people that are still in their journeys, they don't really want to hear from me because they've still got that hope, and I get it, but I think it is important to have these open conversations that actually it's not just a linear successful, not always. I don't really like the way it's framed in that way, but you often read it written in that sort of sense. You have a successful pregnancy and then everything's just fine. One of the findings actually I thought was interesting in the thesis was this idea of pronatalism within the workplace. It was shining through so heavily. So even people that did go on to have a baby, they felt still triggered by baby showers, scan photos, all the things go around. And I didn't realise that would be a finding.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
I had an incident with that, not an incident, but we had a seminar, online seminar at work, and I talked about being childless, as a few other people did, and one of the women I work with got into contact with me and said, I had a lot of trouble having my child, and we didn't have him naturally. We had other paths. But she said, I'm in bits because you've just, what you've talked about has triggered, that grief that was there.
Yeah. It's almost like anticipatory grief, I think, for some who are going through it and they're not sure what's going to happen. And everyone tells them, keep positive, just keep trying, you know how it is. And then, I think it must be really quite moving for them to hear, your story and feeling, okay, that could have been the end point for my story. And they might feel guilty, and I think that can be part of the issue, actually.
Certainly, I've heard from people who have adopted, who went on to go, okay, I'm not doing IVF, or they did go through failed IVF and then were able, and goodness me, that's hard, to get into the adopting. Just for those that listening don't know, you have to be over your fertility treatment, which was not kind of something that worked for me. But she went on, she adopted, and then found that she was then felt furthermore isolated because she was no longer childless. So her childless friends didn't quite know what to say or do, but also she had no birth story. So when she was in the environment of hanging around with, parents and baby groups and things like that, and they were sharing their birth stories, that she had none because it's adoptive. So that entire, again, it's another form of isolation. And because adoption is so hard, there is then another, it was like, where do I find all the adoptive parents then? And they weren't really around where she lived. In this, it was quite isolated where she was in the UK. There wasn't that structure. So, and there was just this little hinterland. And I thought, there's lots of forms of kind of isolation and in our environments, I suppose, that we perhaps don't necessarily realise.
That's so interesting, that, isn't it? Because I guess people or society see it as, well, you've had your success story, you've adopted, and you're fine now. And and we don't really think about the nuances.
No. And also, I think where it lands, with us as childless people who didn't have a child, who didn't adopt, who the adoption failed, where do you bridge the gap in between? Where do you get to the grey space? I'm a great fan of grey spaces, as everyone knows, but it's that kind of the intersectionality, which kind of goes back, I suppose, to kind of where childlessness sits within workplaces and within different forms of society. Is that, when you think about menopause, gender equality, there are all of these different areas where childlessness comes in. And I always think that, particularly on our social media, we have all these kind of like, awareness weeks and awareness days. And I'm sure you must find this, Katie, that you do as well, is that actually, oh yeah, childlessness, we can fit into that. I can create social media around virtually every awareness day that there is, because it intersects with it. We are there.
100%. It's actually one of the recommendations I give to employers, to keep the conversation going, not just in September. Because isn't it so true? You can, there's even things like, obviously, Movember is brilliant, isn't it, for male mental health?
Yeah, we're there.
Yeah.
We're like, Michael, do something. Yeah.
That's it. You've got like Grief Awareness Week, and I think that's a really actually very clever way of inviting stories, into the workplace, so it doesn't just stay in September, if at all, because we know it's not always there at all, is it?
That's really tough sometimes, I think, to get that World Childless Week into people's hearts and minds. I think can be really hard too. I
was thinking about this because it's the whole build up, isn't it? Not even just the summer holidays, but the school allocation places were taking place last week.
They were.
I don't know if it's the same over there, Michael. But there's all these little triggers everywhere.
I'm very well aware of that. And also universities as well. So for some of the empty nesting conversation that's going to come up probably in the run up to September and the start of the university and terms, that's going to be hard too.
100%. But I think it's a really good topic to cover, because like you say, it is a build up. And the summer holidays, although there are other holidays where people without children, are expected to not take holiday here, you're not priority. But I think the summer is especially difficult because it's very emotionally loaded as well, isn't it? And you might have more conversations aimed at you, saying how lucky you are. I've got an example written actually from research. Someone was told, oh, you're so lucky you can go abroad with your partner. I can't afford to take my 3 children. We've never been abroad as a family. Guilt. It's like,
It's making a massive assumption about somebody else's life, isn't it? Because I'm always conscious when people kind of come up with those lines, and I've certainly heard that. I don't know about you, Sarah, Michael, but I've had that levied at me. And it's kind of, okay, well, I'll just show you all of the bills from the treatment. And, if people haven't been through my journey, but they've arrived in childlessness in a different way, then, there's loads of other stuff around, perhaps support, mental health support, tons of other costs and things like that come into play. That is hard. Wow.
100%. I know. I wrote that one down because I've been told that one in different ways.
Oh, okay.
People now, that kind of, because it obviously puts the guilt, because it's like, oh, you can afford, you can take the time. I can't, I don't have that same luxury. But actually, and I was speaking the other day to someone on social media, it looks like she's travelled the world and she's so happy, but actually she's done that as a coping mechanism to just almost escape physically and mentally. She had failed fertility treatment, sadly. And, everyone kept commenting, wow, you're so lucky. You've done all this travelling because you don't have kids. And they didn't grasp, even when she'd be open and say, well, actually, I would swap my whole travel.
Wouldn't we all?
And it's just trying to get people to understand.
What's not being said, I think, as well. What's a good way of handling that? So if someone comes up to you, my instant reaction is probably some rude words and probably actions. Or do you walk away, you do something, you kind of smile and wave, probably, depending on where you work and, how you might deal with it. But what's a good way of handling something like that?
Do you know, I think it is so hard, and there's not really a magic wand I can give to people to say this is how you should respond. But one thing that I would recommend is you could even rehearse your responses, because there are common questions that come up, aren't they? Do you have kids? How many kids do you have? Why don't you have kids? Or you're a career person, all the rest of it. But I think to have a response ready for something that might come out of the blue is really empowering. Because, I think that's part of the issue, that they do stop you in your tracks, because you might be having an okay day, mightn't you?
Yeah.
You just buy the water fountain, and then boom, someone says something like that to you about the holidays or about lie-ins. One thing I would also recommend is this kind of gentle challenge, but it's not perfect because obviously it puts onus on the person going through difficulty, but gentle challenge is quite nice because it might make someone rethink, So, for example, well, that's not always how it feels, or that's not always how it is. And you kind of leave it at that and let them do the work, oh, what does that mean? Because actually you don't owe anyone an explanation, if you don't feel up to it. Equally, if you do feel, like you say, Berenice, if you feel anger, that's a normal response. We shouldn't feel shameful or bad because we have snapped. So if that has been you, because actually it's such a difficult thing to sit with and deal with. And at work, that should be the escape.
Yes.
That's our place. That's where we should feel psychologically safe. Everybody should, regardless, of your parental status or your sexuality. It shouldn't be a place where you feel triggered. Sadly, we know it is. And I know people leave, go freelance, self-employed.
That's not easy either. They're still there. Everything shuts up shoppings for 6 weeks, and you end up with no support whatsoever, even though you paid the full price. Anyway, moving on from that one. That's another conversation, but it's a really important one that actually, if people, my experiences of having sat, and I have to time when I go back into some business network groups so that I'm not in a position where I'm having to listen to the half-term chat, which is hard too. Yeah.
And one thing I advise when I do the training is thinking about when these conversations happen. So, ideally at the end, so you can easily excuse yourself, can't you? Because I think part of the issue is if we say that we don't talk about something, that like don't talk about the war, and then people talk about it. But I think banning something is where people then trip up, isn't it? But I think having like strategies in place and making sure you're role modeling those as line managers. But I know it's hard to get line managers on board in the first place, but actually just advising, and that when they start thinking about it, actually, that could be difficult. We are speaking for 20, 25 minutes about World Book Day and showing costumes or whatever it is. So actually thinking, let's get straight to the point first, and then let's have informal, later, and people can easily leave then, can't they?
I was going to ask, actually, sort of circling back a little bit to those difficult conversations. Obviously, I get a lot of clients that talk about this, and obviously those, how would we describe them? Those reactions that we shouldn't have. You're meant to be a professional, you're meant to have that professional veneer. What's your experience of people that, what are the repercussions? Because, I know from experience that I've had one of those adverse reactions and I've gone off because I've been triggered in the office. And there's a real deep sense of shame that you've crossed a line, that actually you've misbehaved in some way, even though it's a reasonable reaction when we're looking at it. Have you had any sort of conversations about how you handle those those feelings of shame and how you repair it, because that is a huge rupture, isn't it?
It really is. And like you say, it's really warranted. It's, it's understandable. But I think the problem is because it's not really recognised, people might just think, oh, you've acted unprofessionally, you've raised your voice, or you might have come across as aggressive. But I think what happens is because so many people bottle and they don't feel that they can share their story without having something insensitive said back to them or being ignored, it's just bottling and it's kind of bubbling, isn't it, like a volcano? And then, yes, you are going to react, or people that don't, goodness, take my hat off to them. But I think actually it's so normal. And the feelings of shame, like you say, 100%, because actually you feel like you're to blame and you should have been calmer and you should have managed it. But I think just owning that, apologising for what needs apologising for, not the actual feelings, apologise for raising your voice, fine. And then trying to actually explain, why it got to that point. And you could even say, look, it's not personal to you. It's just I'm constantly around this. It's so difficult for me to articulate to you. Because sadly, I think some people don't even understand, even if they've been through struggles. It's strange. It's like they get to the other side and they forget how triggered they were by pregnancy announcements or baby showers or whatever it is. And you feel a bit, how can you forget though?
Yeah, I've had people kind of follow me around the room about that on the mental health first aid course, offering me, on the empathy part, offering me kind of a recommendation for a clinic, which I was quite flattered by in a way, because I thought, oh, obviously you still think I'm young enough to be going through this, obviously, and looking all right for my age. But actually, and I was really lucky because, of course, I had Michael and Sarah around, and I was just like, this happened. I don't even know what to do with this. I'm sitting in a lay-by on the way home, just going, what the hell? What was this all about? Because I completely had forgotten, and it was just like, and to the point, there was some kind of vague amusement, but also the inappropriateness and the just sheer shock that somebody had forgotten just actually what it's like. The only reason that I'd gone in and said anything about childless was because the trainer just kept using his son as an example, and that in itself was incredibly sushi. I think mental health first aid training, I think, can be really hard for people who are childless. I don't know. I know that Mike and Sarah are also a mental health first aiders, and it can be like, wow, okay, everyone's using their kids here as the example as to why this is important to them. And I think sometimes maybe viewing it, I find what has helped me is viewing it as seeing them as just having less dimensions. When obviously would trade anything to be in their place, but sometimes it's just like this flat dimension of this is who I am and this is me and I only live through my children. It's actually like you think, wow, that's quite a small world, actually.
Yeah.
And that's it's quite hard to see. You think, wow, I'm not sure that I would want to do that. And another thing I wanted to observe as well is that actually, and sometimes when we kind of talk and we get angry about things, that on the one or two occasions when I've found there are long-term repercussions, and there was in terms of kind of how I was perceived and as being less professional. I can do my job perfectly, and it's one of the reasons why I do the freelancing thing and run my own stuff now. But what it did bring out was empathy with people who I didn't know, who hadn't had my experience at all. Actually, a couple that weren't even childless, who had children, but actually wanted to do more to support me. So I gained friends from actually kicking off, and just it was I know the incident. I can remember it very vividly, what happened, and actually just having to walk out of the office because there was babies in the office and no one had warned me, and that was what I'd asked for. In fact, it happened after I missed the workshop you did in the place that I was working at, and I thought, this is really poor. This needs to happen. So it was kind of like lots of things fell into place after that, but my initial reaction was just like, this is too much.
Yeah.
I cannot sit here at my desk whilst colleagues who don't know that I'm childless come over and say, do you want to hold so-and-so's baby?
Oh, God.
And then I have to give something back. But actually, I'd already asked people in charge to have that protection for me. It was the very least they could have done. So walking out of the office meant people came out to find if I was okay. And it was just like, this is the situation. And actually, I gained more friendship. That's not always going to happen. But sometimes I think when we when we do get triggered, sometimes something might come from that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I was going to say, sometimes it can
Definitely,
be positive, because then you do,
Maybe.
not for everyone, but it might be that you do disclose and then you're able to access support, you know. But I know there was a lady in my PhD research, and she actually described a panic attack in an open plan office, hiding under her desk, because this lady had just brought her child in out of the blue. She wasn't even working there at the time. She was an ex-colleague. For some reason that did make a difference, I thought, because there was no announcement or planning around it even. And this colleague had known about her struggles. So
it's insulting, isn't it? And that's not entirely the situation I was in, but people knew, and I wasn't protected, and I think that's just so
it's
very,
worse.
very wrong, isn't it?
It's worse, isn't it?
It
And
makes
I understand.
you question your value, doesn't it, as well? But it's if people are listening to this and they have children, and you are a line manager in an office, or even a colleague of someone in an office, and this is really, really, really important to have that equity, or the equality rather, I think, with people who are childless. Treat them the same way as you treat other people and give them that respect. I think it's so important. It really is. If the topics in this episode chime with you, you can get in touch with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn and Blue Sky, and we love your feedback. Childless Not By Choice listeners can carry on the conversation with us in our safe place at the Full Stop online community. For more details on how to join and to claim a free month trial on us, please visit www.thefullstoppod.com. We'd like to give a huge thank you to the current members of our awesome online community, because it's down to them that we can keep the lights on for the podcast, and look forward to giving back to the childless community as we grow.
I think that's a really good example of boundaries, isn't it? How you can set a boundary. I remember people bringing their children in when I was in the office and sprint. I knew where the fire exit was, or I knew where the toilet was. But it feels like such an invasion of your safe space. I think we called it a safe space, don't we? At work, you assume there won't be children. You might have to navigate, chat about schools, but bringing the baby in always felt so intrusive to me. And when you sort of made yourself scarce, I got a reputation for not being available when babies were coming in.
Oh God, me too, Sarah. Yes. It was like,
the amazing
it's a baby. She's
woman.
Gone.
She's gone. She's out of it.
Yeah.
It's a puff of smoke.
Did you find that people thought that you were just anti-children?
They thought I was vehemently anti-kids, and that, you don't like kids anyway. And obviously, the truth is that actually, you can be fairly ambiguous around children, but actually, the pain of being around children is not really accounted for.
Yeah.
So, they're sort of saying, "Oh, do you want to hold?" It's like, absolutely not. No.
You freeze, don't you? You actually freeze. It's like fight or flight.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
in an office as well. In an office where you're surrounded by your colleagues, your boss, the big boss might be there too, and you're like, this could affect my chances of promotion.
Yes, exactly.
It could affect my reliability. Yeah. Everything about me is now really being flayed open for everyone to see, whichever way I go. It's like a form of being trapped. And judging as well. It's judging you for things people don't know, and not allowing space for your grief. If I remember sitting, and this had happened, and a colleague of mine, their mother had died. And the treatment that they got for the loss of their mother was entirely different to mine, because it was a loss that everyone, oh yes, I can understand that. I came up to them and they were just like, oh, take the time off. Oh, and they stopped talking. Not stopped talking about their parents, but they would go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, upset you.
Yeah.
For me, for childless people in general, talking about my kids, and even if people know that you have a loss or know that you can't have children, carry on anyway. There's no appreciation. Oh, I'm sorry, this doesn't happen for you. I'll take this conversation somewhere else. Yeah. It's like, this is an awkward silence, but that boundary between when you bring children into the office, when a company says you can bring kids into the office, there then has to be a conversation about the impact on people who are childless. And also, I have to say, I'm going to just say to child-free people too, because sometimes that grey area between childless and child-free, it's a bit murky, and there might be some crossover there too. And they also demand a little bit of respect in this conversation too.
But it could also be people going through treatments. It could be people who have recently just had a loss, you know, even like a miscarriage or a baby loss. I mean, it's so wide-ranging, but it's all kind of in the dark, isn't it? It's not really brought to light.
That's it. And I think a lot of it is, because it's not seen as a tangible loss. You can visibly see, and it's disenfranchised grief, isn't it? Where you've got to hide it. And I know you'll know more than any, Sarah, is, even in the therapy room, a lot of counsellors, therapists, they are unaware that it's even a grief, aren't they? So where do you turn? And it's like an ambiguous loss. It's one of the sections I've got in my thesis, because actually people can't know by just looking at you, can they? But if you tell them that you've lost a parent or sibling or even a pet, people can kind of, okay, I can get that. And you've got something tangible yourself, haven't you? Like you've got memories, photos, and more. But I think with this, it's just, what do you actually have that's an artifact to kind of cling on to? And I think it really makes it a unique experience and type of grief.
Yeah. I think workplaces, though, are so... I'm going to just get a little bit off track, but when we have things that we're talking about recruitment and about how diverse workplaces should be, within that diversification, there should be better support for people with disabilities, people with chronic illness. They also have a part in this conversation, thinking about past podcasts where people know from the very start, or when they want to think about children, they will know because of various reasons they can't have children give birth.
Yeah.
Then you have people who are single as well, people going through breakups, all in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably actually more of them. I'm just thinking in a rough count of kind of like workplaces I've been in, and I would say that actually it's probably 50-50. If you put everyone together, not everyone that I can think of has children. They might not talk about it, I mean, I will mention it now, but not then. So you wouldn't have known. I think from any of us that we as you say, you don't have a badge unless you want to wear a particular type of badge, then you don't have a badge. Where we give out the full stop hugs, they could be put into a handbag, they could be put into a briefcase. Well, briefcase, that sounds like so 60s, doesn't it, with my bowler hat going to work.
I still love a briefcase.
Yeah. Do you? Oh, excellent, lovely. I like a briefcase, I have to say. Anyway, I'm slightly more professional if I had one. But you can put them in a rucksack or whatever, or you can just put them, at home, or put them in the desk drawer. You've got something. It's not a badge, it's there, but actually, you wouldn't necessarily know that somebody is.
Yeah.
But actually, it kind of lingers in virtually every demographic when people are looking at, broadening the diversification of what they're doing. I've certainly been on a number of training courses around trans awareness. To better support people who are transitioned in different environments. And that is kind of can be there too. It intersects with that as well.
Yeah, 100%.
It's madness, isn't it, really? Sorry, I could rant on about this for ages.
No, I love it. I was just thinking that. I don't want this conversation to end.
Well, can I take it on can I take it on a little different tact?
Of course you
Katy,
can, Michael.
Thank you. Katy, I'm interested in, I'll tell the story first. That same meeting I was telling you about where a woman divulged to me that she was triggered, another person who was in that seminar said, "Oh, I didn't even know childlessness was a thing."
Wow.
How often do you come up against something like that in for instance, the missed work?
To be honest, I would say that a lot of employers, I mean, they might know, oh yeah, like I know an auntie that couldn't have kids, but I'm not sure she didn't want them, or maybe she did. No one really knows. There might be, someone might say something like that. And then it's really trying to actually highlight that this is a prevalent issue and it's only something that is increasing. And I would say most people are really shocked by the stats. And the other issue I think as well is that it's amazing that someone responded in that way, because I think everyone will know someone, won't they? Or you've at least heard of, I don't know, but I guess because they're so stigmatized, and in the workplace especially, there are so many assumptions, aren't they, that are based around this kind of normative idea that everyone is a parent, and if they're not, it's because they didn't want to be, you know?
Exactly.
And it's reinforced everywhere. And I know we're going to talk about the holidays, but I think even in things like policy, practices and everyday discourses, that is an assumption that's there because it's a societal, cultural assumption that leaks into workplaces, and sadly, this is why we have issues with the holidays, for example, because there's a myth around, oh, you're more available, you don't have kids, and you're okay with that because you chose not to have kids, because I think it stems from so many things in society, but even from like sex education, you're just told how not to get pregnant because it's going to happen so easily, goodness, be careful. And then everywhere, I know we've spoken about this before, but in films and media, Seth Rogen films especially, get pregnant by accident. Oh goodness, I've got to mature and be a dad. It's so annoying. But yeah, we're just kind of surrounded by the idea that it's so linear and straightforward, and it's quite fortunate, I think, with social media that more and more celebrities especially are speaking out about struggles. I think it's opening conversations elsewhere. I don't know if you agree with this, but certainly it's helped my work, Jennifer Aniston being a key one, really.
Yeah, I think it has. I also think there's that element now, I think of, again, we try very hard to keep away from the politics of everything out there because the world is complicated and awful in many ways right now.
Yeah.
But actually childlessness pops up quite a bit, I think, in the news about misconceptions of childlessness. I think this kind of dual income, no kids, stinky type thing that's going on, that comes up a bit. Mixing up childlessness with child-free people who genuinely, absolutely have chosen that's not what they want to do. And this huge panic now about the decline in fertility rates as well, which is all over the news at least every week. And a lot of that, I think, really, I mean, certainly we've had the conversation briefly on the podcast about, the state of the planet, and, would one really want to, given the world right now? I sort of, certainly last week I was watching Grayson Perry exploring AI, and that was like, gee, okay.
Oh,
this is watch it. It is absolutely brilliant, but also slightly terrifying. And then sort of woke up in the middle of the night going, oh God. So I think a lot of people have genuine, valid concerns as to why they may think, I don't know if I can do this. But it also brings in the narrative of all the things that I know Jodie's talked about around that kind of 50 ways not to be a mother.
Yeah.
And actually a father as well. Most of them apply to kind of all genders, but poverty is one of them, social situations. And when they come up in the conversation, then I think we have to sort of sit and talk about where childlessness sits into that too. It's an interesting way to sort of intersect things, I think, and I keep saying that word, and this entire episode is going to pop up probably in some kind of thing about best word, intersectionality. But it happens so often that we fall in those gaps somewhere along the line in the conversation all the time. And those sorts of things, and it comes into the news quite a lot, that actually we're not having enough kids.
Yeah. I think this
there's
really
a reason
leads,
for that. Yeah.
exactly. And it leads into that kind of blame culture,
Yes.
I think. And this
silos and taking sides. Yeah.
And there's an us and them, and there's stereotypes,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think this doesn't help really, because, again, the assumptions around, oh, you've chosen not to, or that's not good, because you're affecting birth rates. There's a massive decline. What are we going to do?
Yeah. Who's going to look after us when we get older, and all the rest of it? Meanwhile, people are complaining about immigration, and you're just... Anyway, let's not go there, because I could rant on about that as well, and that's not what we're doing here with the podcast. But it is that kind of realising that people are people. We're not just kind of numbers on a spreadsheet or something, or a term, a cute term, dinky, or whatever's been applied to us. That's not who we are. We're all individuals with loads and loads of reasons why we are not parents, that all appear in the workplace. And I would lay money that certainly from my work in corporate is that they've all got little kind of things that they're doing around that. But still honour the baby showers in the office. There will be a group for, and I know we've talked about this, Katie, before, for parents and carers all shoved in together. But it's dominated by the parents every single time. Yeah. And I've certainly seen that in those groups where the parents are complaining about the fact that they can't bring their children anywhere further than the coffee shop.
Yeah, it's the same with like women's networks.
Oh God,
yeah. It's hard.
I'm sorry, I don't mean this, but I'm going to say it. I really hate business women's networks. I absolutely hate them. I avoid them like the plague.
Yeah, and it's because it's normalised.
Yes,
it's okay that it's mostly centred on that, Yeah. And sadly, I think sometimes it just comes from a place of just complete unawareness.
Yeah.
Complete, because our, understanding, and we might just even assume that everybody just has children at a certain age. So they might not even have to say to us, and we might just think, oh yeah, well, they must do. They must be married.
Yeah.
With mortgage.
Yeah.
You know how it is. So
yeah.
I don't
Or you're doing it for the kids, which is actually it's also the name of a podcast and a group. And it is actually for business owners called that. And I know that at least it does what it says on the tin. And I know to avoid it, and that's okay. And I'm glad that they've done that. But actually, it is adding to that perception that all people who are in business are doing it for their children.
Yeah, especially freelancers or part-time workers.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've had that when I was part-time working, and it was someone said to me who'd had 2 children. They've got 2 children now. She actually said to me in the Liz Wild, your children. And I said, I don't have children. Yes, you do.
What?
I think I might have remembered that. It's quite a significant life thing that I would know if I had. And it was just, I don't even know where that kind of state of madness. Maybe she just hadn't had enough sleep, because she was probably busy telling everyone about that anyway, and was in that psychosis of not having sleep as parents experience. But it was just like, ow.
I don't know if it's an excuse, No,
I don't think so. I'm being very generous there, but it was just like, yes, you do. No, I think I'd remember that. But again, part-time workers, you do it for that reason.
Yeah, it is. And, just coming back to the holiday thing, because I think we were speaking at the beginning, weren't we, about teachers?
Yes.
And I wanted your thoughts on this, because I did actually used to be a teacher for many years. And people always said, oh, you're so lucky you get the holidays. And a lot of people who wanted to have children or who had children said that was a big part of why they went into teaching, which I thought was a bit bizarre. But I can understand, okay, practically the holidays might work around it. But I think there's a real issue that, because there's an assumption, isn't there, that you have the full 6 weeks off.
Yeah.
I know it might be different where you are, Michael. But actually there are lots of days, in teaching that you have to be available for, like inset days or whatever they used to call them. It was an acronym where I worked and I still don't even know what it stood for. But so yeah, they sort of said, right, you've got to be around in case we got to interview a student for a course, or goodness even know what it was for. Anyway, we had to do 9 of those days. And I can remember there was a conversation about, well, parents should have the solid block. So, your 9 days as someone without children should just be spread all over. But, if you've got kids and they're on holiday, you should have the more solid blocks of time. And I just remember thinking, well, that's not right, because I still deserve a block of time to go on holiday as well, surely. And obviously it would be more expensive to go at certain times. So, if you go the very first week, I think that's usually a bit cheaper, or the very last week, isn't it? But yeah, so there's that expectation. And then I think the problem is as well, if you are a childless teacher, there's a lot of issue with you're taking that holiday because you're forced to.
Yeah.
But it's very family centric everywhere you go, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it is. Yeah. You will be surrounded by people who are expecting or have children. We're actually talking a bit about that in our Full Stop online community at the moment, about how, just it's when you're in that kind of, sometimes you can just feel more vulnerable to it. But actually, you're right. When it's school holidays, of course, everyone's going to be, well, a lot of people are going to be with their families, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really hard, because I think the assumption as well is that, well, if you're a teacher of a certain age, well, you must have your own children, because you obviously wanted to work with them.
Yeah.
That logic. But yeah, it's obviously it's not always the way for some people. And I think it must be really hard to do that job. And midwifery as well.
Yes.
That's probably the worst. I don't know if that's fair to say. Would you agree with that? Is midwifery the worst one?
I don't know I honestly don't know. I know of at least 2 people that are midwives who are childless.
How do they do it?
I don't know. How we need to get somebody, I think, on the podcast to talk about that, because there can't be the fact that I know 2. I'm sure that Michael, Sarah, you might know different people. I don't know. They're obviously out there.
I know one that says it is tough.
Yeah.
She's lucky she's educated herself a bit further and is now more in a teaching role. But she said, it ain't easy.
Yeah. It's a load of training, isn't it? Well, teaching as well. I mean, I've worked in educational publishing, and teaching is relentless, but it's highly, highly skilled work. Midwifery is the same. You have done your career, you've done all this training, loads of it, and then you're in this bit where you can't do the thing that you wanted to do. Your career is hugely impactful to you. Your workplace is massively triggering. Nursing, I think, in general, I think as well, from nurses that we know. Yeah. Again, it's massively triggering. I just remember the conversation. It's never left me when we did the talk, the 3 of us at Story House Childless, and one of the things that came up in our Q&A in the audience was that people were saying they were left, because they were single, they were childless, they were more vulnerable during the pandemic, because they worked in a nursing environment. And I would imagine that's probably also true of midwifery, teaching, and other places like that. There is a perception that you are more expendable, and your job should never. We're not kind of in the mills in Lancashire in the 1800s here. This is 2026. no one should be expendable. Although, to be fair, children were more expendable then. But anyway, it's a modern environment.
I think with the midwifery, so I interviewed a midwife.
All right,
thesis, and so I ran a pronatalism at work project where I invited people to just share, it could be anonymous or not, examples of pronatal practices or experiences that they had at work. And it was just, I felt all emotions, anger, sad, frustrated. It really helped me with my own training, because I feel that every time I hear a new story, there's always something to learn from it, even if it's similar to someone else's. But there was a midwife who said that she was judged by a couple patient, and they said that she couldn't understand and she couldn't be a good midwife because she didn't have the lived experience. And I just thought, oh my goodness. But would you have said that to someone who's just trained and they're young? Would you have had the same? Do you know what I mean? Was it because she was a certain age and she didn't have children? So I think there was a lot going on there, but I couldn't believe that she faced that comment. I thought it might be more implicit, but I was gobsmacked at that example.
I've had it in a smaller way with my work doing children's books. And actually a client said to me that I couldn't possibly design and create with her as a writer a children's book because I wasn't a mother.
Oh, you're kidding.
That's all right. I was just like, I don't want to work with you anyway then, because actually, I've won awards for my design work, and actually I have worked with many leading publishers on that. And actually I do it very well. And when I actually looked the book up and it was really crap. So there you go. But actually, I was judged for that. It's the only one time that I have been, I'll be honest. But I think they must have perhaps discovered my name associated with the full stop. And then when they got to me in my other capacity, they were just like, no, you don't have the lived experience.
That is absolutely...
Which is ridiculous.
It's discrimination.
It's discrimination, but also it's design, it's not like I don't need to give birth to be... Anyway, yes, that happens though, doesn't it?
That.
But so I've experienced it, but there is a lot, I think, within that environment, and it's incredibly... that's so closely entwined to birth, that is hugely insulting and upsetting. I think it's massive discrimination.
With the other lady who I interviewed, I found her experience quite interesting because she said that, so my assumption going into the interview was that because she worked in midwifery, they might be more aware of loss, or they should be more aware. So I thought it might be a bit more of a nice environment. And I was very stunned to hear that when she disclosed that she'd had a pregnancy loss, most colleagues just avoided her. And she actually got penalised for taking leave. So her own manager didn't know about the protected leave in midwifery. What on earth? I just, doing these interviews, honestly, it took it out of me because I felt so emotional, hearing, and and I've read these transcripts over and over, and it still shocks me when I'm telling you now. I just can't actually believe this has happened. But
there's a really, really interesting talk with Dr. Saab Clare. She is a parent, I will give that, who MBE, and she's a mother, she's a wife. She was the deputy, or is the deputy director of the Sandwell and West Birmingham NHS Trust, and she actually set herself up as being a whistleblower for poor mental health practices in the NHS. And one of the things that she talked about was that about lift as you climb. It's actually a very good talk, but there is all of the boundaries about she is a mother. She just mentioned that, but I attended a talk that she did within the University of Cambridge, and in that I just sort of said to her, she mentions a bit about women not supporting women in the NHS, which I've heard is in a lot of conversations that happened. But you could have heard a pin drop in that talk because people were just like, does that happen? Does that happen? do women not do that? And it was just like, well, actually that happens. And it was just like, I put my hand up and just said, well, yeah, childlessness, actually.
Yeah.
Can I just make a point here that, you've led with being a mother, I get that, and okay, fine that you've done that, but actually for me that's quite hard. But actually women don't allow space for other women to talk about that. So her talk, I think, actually, yeah, that connects very much to what your experiences are, Katie, that actually, it becomes then, there's just these silos, I think, within healthcare where it's not talked about enough. Yeah, and it just immediately came to mind with what you just said there. Yeah, she's a whistleblower though, and as one got, well, not one, been awarded an MBE for her work on that, and lots of other works, awards as well, for just talking about stuff that people don't talk about. It's made it her mission to kind of mend those silos and make sure those conversations are brought to play. But actually, her conversation with me about childlessness after the event was interesting because she was quite open to talking about that.
Yeah. Very positive.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, I can imagine that must land really hard with you. For going in and expecting something a little bit more supportive with the research you're doing. That's hard.
Yeah, I don't know if you would assume the same, really, but I just thought they'd just be more aware of struggles and issues. And I guess they are, but there's still a silence. There's still a stigma.
And I guess, like we talk about, we had it on the podcast before, people have talked about being in maternity wards for fertility treatment.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't make it up, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a whole language thing. What was the episode we did with Gail? And that was actually in the US and their experiences in the US healthcare system, but a lot of it kind of correlated to ours, where some of the language can be, people are asked about pregnancy for reasons because they have to be for liability, but actually the general periphery around that, the language further around that, the wider non-disclosure, I suppose, or non-legal reasons as to why you need to ask someone if they're a mother or father or going through pregnancy is a bit iffy, I think.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes, I wondered whether. So I've come up with some solutions too.
We like those. We love a solution. Yes.
I don't know if it's a bit of an overpromise by saying it's a solution, actually, when I think about it.
Some suggestions. Possible ways to navigate. Navigation. There you go. Navigation.
Yeah. So I'd love to run them by you because I really like that you asked me to look at something so specific to do with boundaries and holidays, because it is an issue, obviously, that comes up a lot. But to look at it in so much depth and think about solution, it was really interesting to me that, you can't just wave a magic wand and here you go, this is going to fit every employer and, sector, role, etc. So with the leave, and we know from research, the limited research we have anyway, we know that there's an issue, don't we, with actually the priority being given to people with children. That is, an issue. And I come across it a lot in my work as well. So what could we do? Well, I thought about, actually having a transparent booking system so you can see people's leave. And this is something that's been used in smaller teams where I've worked. So, you can see who's off when. Now, I think this works to a point. I think it can be useful if you're in a smaller group and if everyone's role is different. So, do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter that, okay, you're not covering as such because you're off anyway and that role is then. So, yeah, I guess that could work for some. And then, really thinking about like avoiding the sort of informal favours, because this is something that we see, don't we? If parents sort of ask, oh, could I just have that day because it's Christmas play or something? And yeah. Not every company is supportive of that. And I'm, not trying to be making assumptions there. But, the informal favours, I think, could be problematic in terms of leave, couldn't it? Because especially if it's a regular thing or if it shifts. So, where you've got a rota and then someone, again, in the Pronatalism at Work project, they said, well, I'm always rostered for the rubbish shifts, the night shifts, the weekend shifts. So it's not just holidays, is it? It's more than that. And it's thinking about fairness.
Yeah. My husband found that actually when we were going through the IVF treatment. So he was doing shift work and he was on the rubbish shifts, and actually trying to move a shift in and around the father's missus that he worked with was actually quite hard to do. And then had to kind of disclose that he was, it was hospital stuff, but it was that you got to take unpaid leave.
Right. Oh my goodness. And it's awful, isn't it? It's like, it's so, what's the word? Spontaneous.
Yeah.
You're
sort of
told, right, you need to be at the clinic.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And the perception actually that as a guy, all he had to do was kind of like do something in the cup over some porn mags. And it was just like, that's it. That's what you got to do. You're all right. It's something else you do, is there? And that doesn't. No.
It really frustrates me. Yeah. It's just. Yeah. Sort of
Vicky, my wife, used to work in a department store, and everyone knew, because she was going through IVF at that point, knew that she was having problems. But they gave her all the shit shifts because, of course, you don't have kids, so these shifts can go to the people who've got to pick their kids up and all that sort of stuff. So you're persecuted, because you don't. That's how she felt.
100% get that. And, it's even more of a kick in the teeth, I think, the fact that you're struggling and you're trying, because it's like, it's just a constant trigger. It's like a constant reminder at work. Well, you don't have kids, so you're at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm so sorry you've been through that. That's just so awful to navigate, I think, because I think it's like a battle that you don't need when you're already feeling vulnerable, exposed, going through grief, that's not publicly, socially recognised, all of this. So why should you have to fight to have equality in terms of leave and shifts?
Exactly.
It's just horrendous. So obviously you've got that potential system. So my partner is an HR manager, so it's great. He can help me with that side of the workplace.
Great choice there, Katie.
I know.
Great choice. Yeah.
How did that work out so well? We both used to teach, actually. So he was saying one thing that you could do, because obviously in a small team, a transparent system could work. But he was saying in the massive organisation he works in, that's a bit difficult. You might not want everyone to see your pattern and your shifts, and I get that. So he says how they do it is it's like a first come, first serve. So then the factor of children doesn't even come into it. So I said to him, but what if you start the organisation and everyone's already booked up all the holiday? And he's like, well, we'll always honour a holiday at the interview. If they say, we'll always try and work around it. But I thought that was quite interesting. I just wondered your thoughts on those systems and whether you think they would work. Because I think it's kind of, for me, it would be advising an organisation, based on their unique functions and, what they do. But yeah.
I think it could work really well because you see, it takes out the childless and the children thing. Dare I say it, people perhaps without children might be a bit better organised. That could be in the favour, maybe. Yeah. It takes out that, because that is the thing I think around it, is that the pronatal card is so heavily used, and if you have a manager, and I'm thinking about line managers who, if they're childless, because it's not just you've got directors and people like that who may be having to make decisions, if they are also without children for any reason, they're put into difficult places as well. So they may not want to give preference to people who have children,
Yeah.
or they may be having to walk a fine line. Or if they do have children, they've got to kind of think in a different way. If you remove that from the conversation and it just becomes what it is, which is holiday, it's a break, it's a legal entitlement for people to have a break from work. And it shouldn't be that people who don't have children get to September with God knows how many days of leave to take, and that can impact their productivity at work as well, because then they're not able to take their leave in a way that works best for them to have a break maybe once a month or have 2 weeks holiday. You have to factor in, you might get 25, 27 days of leave or whatever, however much that might be in a workplace. And you have to people have to take that fairly.
Yeah.
So if you're not taking out the whole child thing, that might kind of work. Does that correlate to your experiences, Sarah, of working in corporate, or was it just a bit more ruthless for you?
Yeah.
To be honest, I think it's really difficult because there were lots of adjustments made for people with children, rightly. But it does mean that often if you don't have children or you're on your own, you're single, you are seen as a gap plugger, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's an easy resource to draw on, or perceived to be that way. I think with the holiday systems, I think in principle what you're suggesting there, it does work well because it does take out the implicit bias that even parented or non-parented have. But I can see often what used to happen for us is that there'd be like conversations around, oh, well, so-and-so's got that holiday. Do they really need that holiday? I need that holiday. And you're right. I think if you don't have children, then you are more likely to be looking horizon scan and think, well, do you know what? I want to go away X, Y, Z. Whereas actually, and I can only draw on my own experience here, parents tend to be, they're so in it that they go, oh, do you know what? I need to book that off and it's only 2 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
And so I can see there being difficult conversations on a more granular level with people individually, and therefore the person that doesn't have the children has to have their boundaries in place, knowing that their management or the echelons or the policies will back them and saying, hey, listen, I booked it months ago, end of story.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only little wrinkle I could perceive, that actually it goes from being, well, I've booked it, to actually you don't really need that, do you?
Yeah, and this is what my partner was saying that he comes across. So even though it's formally scheduled in, you have the informal issues of, oh, but can you just swap with me?
Yeah.
Because, I didn't realise that there was a teacher training day or whatever. So I really need to leave. And then there might be, like you say, conversations about who's more deserving.
Yeah, the water cooler gossip. The
This is really interesting because I don't work in corporate and I haven't worked in corporate, and so from a blue collar point of view, one of the places I worked at, 24-hour operation, and so we had rules around, okay, we need this many people off it, this many people can have a holiday, particularly around about Christmas. That's when our summer holidays are. So we only can have X amount of people off. But what sits behind that is a list that was worked out democratically, I think, or actually not democratically, might have been names out of a hat, that sets up the order. And then the first person on top of the list, you get first choice. Next, and then once you've had that first choice, you're at the bottom of the list and you work up. And so it was not about who's got what, who has what. Yeah. It was just more about, this is your opportunity to be first. That's it. And then, but then I was thinking about an incident where someone came to me and said, look, I need to have this time off. Do you want to swap? No, because I don't like you. So no. The difference between working in corporate and heavy industry, I think. But yeah.
Well, do you know what I was going to say, though? There's those perceptions of being difficult, isn't there? And I think we then go back to I should be X, Y, and Z, and how is this going to impact on my career, blah, blah, blah. It's all of those sort of playground stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and often it is, isn't it, though? Like it is like a playground. Workplaces can be like navigating junior school. You can, it is, and it's just, when we talk about, I mean, just circling back to kind of like when we've kind of been angry in the workplace for kind of things that maybe have triggered us, then actually I think about all the amount of other ridiculous conversations that happen in workplaces as well. Holiday is one of those things, isn't it? Yeah. And actually, the whole going back to my husband and not being able to have the shifts that he wanted as well. And also for him, one of the great things, well, a small minor kind of crumb of comfort was that, of course, he could get all the overtime at the weekends, which kind of, literally was like time and a half or double time on a Sunday. But that was just kind of like, he got paid for that. But, it was that thing, the whole kind of having a choice to say, actually, I'd like to do the overtime, or I would not like to do the overtime, and I'd like to do that shift. Shift work, I think, is very complicated for lots of people, because it does bring in the whole conversation about sleep. And children.
Yes, my friend was saying about this, because she said the shift she does as a mental health nurse, so you do some days and then you have to do some nights.
Yeah.
And, she was saying actually a lot of people want to leave to move into the community when you do have children, because it's more of a friendlier, not 9 to 5, but and so a lot of parents get preferential treatment for those jobs,
don't they? They do.
Yeah.
They do.
I mean, not that you could prove it easily, but you know what I'm saying. It's it's a thing. It's easier to move in and kind of have it justified, I think is what she was saying.
Yeah, it is. What other navigational tips do you have, Katie?
Oh yes, sorry, I know that I'm keeping you a bit now.
No, it's fine. We love solutions. They are our favourite bit of a podcast. Not always do we have them, and these aren't solutions so much as preface them as being ways to navigate.
Yes, suggestions.
Gems.
I'm going with your suggestions. I like that better. I'm not overcommitting here, but yeah, just thinking as well. Actually thinking about the support that you can put in place for people, because holidays are emotionally loaded, for people without children, who are struggling, dealing with that. So actually having that made transparent and saying, we realise that this could be difficult, you're coming into work and, what have we got in place for you? So actually thinking about those things.
I think opening up meetings so that meetings aren't, are you all struggling during the school holidays? I think not doing that. That's really annoying. Yeah.
Exactly. The juggle.
Are you all juggling? No.
And it's that assumption.
But actually you are, because you're covering for everybody else. So,
yes, you're doing your own juggle.
Yeah.
And then I think a really nice idea that everybody can do, if you are creating resources or just in everyday conversations, but kind of normalizing and showcasing that diverse, life courses and family setups, really key. And I know you're saying about this, Berenice, in talks and things, even in the images that we use, in just general training.
Yeah.
And the example, that's really key. Now, sometimes I feel that the advice could put responsibility on, the person that's going through this.
Yeah.
So actually having, training, which, obviously we offer at MIST, can be really nice to have someone come in external. So you're not exposing yourself.
Yeah, and you do it brilliantly. I had a huge endorsement there for Katie, because you did that with the university in Cambridge, and it was brilliant. So yeah, it takes the weight away from the people who may be vulnerable themselves. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Berenice. Oh yeah, it was a pleasure to work with you. I know it's a long time ago now.
It was.
I think it was.
It was.
And yeah, it can be really good, because obviously within that training, it's about communicating and responding appropriately, and just being aware of, diverse family makeups, and that this is, a grief for many people. I'd say as well, you could have an anonymous feedback system on workload and leave. Could be quite a nice one just to sort of see,
Yeah.
a bit like a 360 appraisal, but just it could be really simple. It could just be a survey that you send round.
Yes. Yeah.
These things are so simple sometimes. But obviously, if you feel that there's still disparity, there's unfairness, involving line manager and HR might be the way that, you have to go. And sadly, that can put onus on, people going through this. But it might even be that they need to do a bit of a policy review, because we know flexible working, that's a big one, isn't it? Where,
yes,
well, I don't even need to tell you, but yeah, it comes up a lot in the work that I do about, flexible working being granted just automatically when you've got a baby. And of course, that is really supportive of a parent returning to work. We know that. We don't want to take that away. Mm-hmm. But actually, why can't you also be granted flexibility, looking at workload, looking at leave? It should be fair. It shouldn't be based on parental status, Yeah. And then just to sort of say, a lot of people are unaware. Pronatalism is drummed into them. We spoke about this earlier, didn't we? And a lot of people just don't realise, and they're just focused on their own struggles. So, if they're thinking about balancing, oh my goodness, 6 weeks of holiday and I've only got this much leave, and balancing it, I think recognising that that's stressful, but bringing this in alongside that this is equally difficult would be quite nice. And this is a technique that I often use with employers, and I think they like it because I'm not going in saying that we need to take anything away. So I think it's a good route to go.
It's adding to the richness, I think, of the conversation and seeing people as individuals. And we're probably strayed a little bit close to the line, but we always say with the full stop that we don't bash parents, and I don't think that we should, because it's hard. I can't imagine how hard it must be to have your kids out of school 6 weeks, not enough leave, affording to go on holiday. And it's true. I mean, genuinely, that comment about, it's not right to bring in the childless narrative, but it's okay to say, I'm finding it really hard to go on holiday because I can't afford it. That's the conversation. That's the point, not you can. It's having and acknowledging, I think, where we all stand within the workplace to make it a little bit more equitable, so that everyone's allowed to say, well, I find it hard because I don't have children. And I don't want to be here at this time doing this. You're then allowing space at the table for other people to bring in their conversation, which is just what it should be. It's not about them and us. It's not siloing. So it's listening a little more, because it must be very, very hard, I think, to juggle all of those demands. Having kids and not having kids and meeting in the middle, it is tough. And workplaces are incredibly public places, and I think certainly in the situation now, we don't have things like Job for Life as such anymore. We are judged by what we do, regardless. Increasingly it's bringing in personal narratives, but that's got to be everyone's personal story, not just some of them.
100%.
Not the happy ones. And there is happiness to be found in our line of work as well, and great ways of empowering other people too. And Katy, I think that your work that you do is incredibly important within workplaces and within the childless community. So thank you for being here today.
It's been amazing, and I won't leave it so long next time to come back. It's been so nice. I just don't want to leave.
Stay.
Thanks for listening. You can find more of what we get up to at www.thefullstoppod.com, where you can join our listeners list and ways in which you can support our work. But the best way would be to join our online community, where you can both support our work but also become part of what others are calling one of the best spaces on the internet for support and community. And as always, it's important for us to let you know you are not alone.
Say anything now, but
No,
So congratulations on your PhD. How was that experience?
Yeah. Oh,
and you were working. I mean, my gosh, you're still alive. Well done.
I'm still alive. But you know, when people say congratulations, because it feels like I thought I'd feel in a more celebratory state.
Yeah.
But I think because I know the Viva is around the corner, I don't feel like it's over. So it's a strange feeling. But I just keep thinking about all the things that I had to take out because of the word count, you know?
Yes, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.